Alright, hello everyone and welcome back to the next stream. Today is day 21. I'm becoming a full stack developer in 8 months. And today we're tackling CSS grid positioning, grid elements, and the good thing is that I saw at the end we have to do some exercises from the repository, which is pretty good, and I'm a little bit tired of only reading, so that's good. So we can start. Thank you everyone who subscribed off stream. I really do appreciate you guys. Now I have my monster with me. Hello there, my brother, Supreme Overworld, always here on time. Thank you so much for joining the stream, brother. How are you doing today? I got something to drink, so it will be easier to read through the article. And after that, we'll do the exercise from the repository. So, starting with the introduction, in this lesson we'll examine the different parts of a grid and explore common properties that can be used to position grid items. We'll learn to describe the differences between tracks, lines and cells, which I already feel like I can do. This is like we learned it last lesson, so position items by defining their start and end lines, use shorthand notation. So I feel like all of this we already learned in the previous lesson, same DN article, but I guess let's go through it. Reviewing tracks. Before we dive straight into positioning, let's establish some terminology to better understand the different parts of a grid. In the previous lesson, you learned that when you define a grid using grid template, you're defining the tracks the grid will have. You can think of a track as any single row or column on a grid. To give an example, if you want to create a 3x3 grid with 100 pixel rows and 100 pixel columns, we need to define 3 horizontal tracks with a height of 100 pixels and 3 vertical tracks with a width of 100 pixels. And here they just show you how it's done with the grid template rows and columns. We can skip through that. You notice the 2 CSS lines have been commented on out of this code pen. Uncomment the property first row. Alright, so this was commented. Here we can just better see the track. So this is a horizontal track and this is a vertical track. I think it's going to be this one. Yep. Alright. Lines. Whenever we create grid tracks, grid lines are created implicitly. This is important. Grid lines are only created after our grid tracks have been defined. We cannot explicitly create grid lines. Hi there, cryptic out of context. I haven't seen you in a while, brother. What is up with you? Thank you for joining the stream, my man. How are you doing today? So every track has a start and an end line. The lines are numbered from left to right and top to bottom, starting from 1. So our 3x3 grid above has vertical lines for columns ranging from 1 to 4 and horizontal lines for rows ranging again from 1 to 4. I'm good. What about you? Yeah, me as well, my man. I just finished work and I'm streaming. Got back from Oman. How was there? Was it good? Did you go around the city? Did you make the Python project? How was the trip? Grid lines are what we use to position grid items. We'll get to that in a minute, but first let's take a deeper look at grid lines using our developer tools. If you open up developer tools in Chrome, so we already did this last stream, we opened up developer tools. You can navigate to the layout pane and you made a basic employee system. I'll just let you do your thing and watch the stream. Oh, no worries. That's cool. Weren't you like a little longer than that? Because I remember you were going to go for a weekend. I think it was more than that. But it was good, right? Alright. Select the correct element from the grid overlays. So we already did this with the inspect element, so we're not going to bother. Yeah, it was great. Yeah, perfect. Good to hear, my man. Super. Is the beautiful city? Notice that the developer tools also show negative lines opposite from the positive lines. You don't have to worry about the negative lines for now, but know that this gives you another option to use when positioning the grid item. So, cells. The space in a grid shared by a single row track and a single column track is called a grid cell. You can think of a grid cell like a cell in a spreadsheet, a space defined by a row, column, coordinate. By default, each out element of a grid container will occupy one cell. In the example above, we have 9 cells in our grid, so 3 by 3, each with one automatically positioned child element inside. The element marked with the letter A is occupying a cell that lies in row track 1 between row grid lines 1 and 2, and column track 1 again between columns 1 and 2. Okay, so the item marked with the letter H is in a cell at row track 3. Alright, so I don't have to read it. I get the gist of it, but what happens if we want to change the order of our grid items, if we want items to occupy more than one cell? So already from the previous lesson we saw that you need to target like the class that the item has, and then set the what was it? Was it like grid row and set the line, grid column start, for example, and grid column end. Yeah, but let's read through it. To get a feel for how items can be positioned, we'll create a mock floor plan for an apartment. Let's start with total area of our apartment, the grid container, divide it into a 5 by 5 grid. To make this example a little cleaner, we'll use a background color to distinguish our container space. Note that we're also using display inline grid here so that our container does not stretch to take up space the way a block level box would. This will help us better visualize the space. So they're making a template. Here they're defining the rows, so 5 rows of 40 pixels and 5 columns of 40 pixels each, display inline grid, and they set the background color, so this is what we get. It doesn't look like a grid because you don't see the lines, but it is a grid indeed. And as it stands, this is a pretty sad unit. To make it less of an empty box and more of a home, we're going to add some items to our grid container that will represent different rooms. This is very interesting actually how they're explaining all this. So first they just have the container, and now as I can see they're adding different divs with the class of room and a different ID. So we have ID for living room, kitchen, bedroom, bathroom, closet, and so on. This is very interesting how they're doing it. Then after that, they're setting the styles for each room with a border of 1 pixel solid. Font size is 50% and text align center, so we can actually see what each of the rooms are. Then they're starting with the living room and are positioning it from column start 1. Can I actually inspect this to better show it to you? Let me see the code pen result. It's a little bit tricky to show, but wait, this is not it. Result, yeah. So if we go on to here, seems like the oh my days. Wow, so sorry guys, I didn't mute the because I'm also watching it on YouTube as you are, and so sorry for that. I didn't know I didn't mute it. Oh, that was so sorry. That was probably unbearable to listen to. Wow, thank you, my man, for notifying me. You're always notifying me when there is something wrong with the sound, and so sorry, guys. But yeah, I didn't mute the YouTube live stream. Damn. Anyway, so here as you can see, this is the grid. Can I zoom it in even more? It's a little bit hard. wait. So here the living room, for example, I think it's hard to see, but no, don't worry about it. I was going to show you the lines, but there is a line number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6 here, and in the CSS it's going from 1 to 6, so it's occupying the whole space from column line 1 to column line 6. But yeah, couldn't show it properly. Also, again, oh my days, the video is, wait, I might change my software because it's happening for the second time now. Last stream it also happened, but I just noticed it right now. See, now you can actually see what I'm going through. Alright, we didn't have a particularly good start of the stream, let's say. Probably pissed some people off. But yeah, I've just read through this entire thing and you couldn't see anything. Wow, that was silly. I was trying to show you those grid columns. Wow. Anyways, I'm not very good at this, seems like. I'll remember to check this more often. Most of our rooms represent a single grid cell, but we have given ourselves a large living room. We position this item using grid column start and grid column end. Their property values represent the column grid lines we wish to start and end with. You also notice we have commented out property values for this item's grid row positioning. Uncomment the grid row start. Alright, so uncomment this. And now it starts from this grid line for the row. So first there is a second in between and we are ending at the third line. So it's taking like double this kitchen for the rows, at least. To see how our living room can get even bigger by taking up the grid track between the first and third grid lines. So these properties allow us to use our existing grid lines to tell items how many rows and columns each item should span across. Take a minute to play around with the property values here. If the line numbers are confusing, inspect the container using your dev tools to show the grid overlay. Show the result. Next, we need to use our space more efficiently. We'll make the rest of our rooms span multiple grid cells and fill out the rest of the apartment. So as you can see, the living room is as it was. Next we have the kitchen, which starts at grid column 4, so it starts at this one, this imaginary like line right here we have, and ends at 6, and it starts from grid row 3 and ends at 6. And each of them, they're just positioning them with grid column start and grid column end, and this way they're making like a little apartment plan. Alright, so now we have the blueprints for our full apartment. It's funny that it's also blue, so it's really a blueprint. If you take a look at the kitchen selector, you see that we use shorthand properties there. So where is the kitchen? Yeah, they use grid column and grid row, and first one is where they start and the last one is where they end. So this is the shorthand property. Instead of writing, for example, grid column start and grid column end, you can put it into one how do you say it, definition, I don't know, but use one property, I guess, one shorthand property. It's just a combination of grid column start and grid column end with a slash between the two values, and grid row is the shorthand version for setting an item's row positioning. Okay, One problem with our floor plan is that the bathroom and kitchen are on opposite ends of the apartment. We would like to save money on plumbing by placing these two rooms back to back. Take a minute now and see if you can change the starting and ending position for the bathroom, bedroom and closet so that the bathroom is right next to the kitchen. You can use either the Wong or Schonhardt properties here. So take a minute, see now how you can change the starting any position for the bathroom, bedroom and closet. So they want to switch those two over. They want the bedroom and closet to start at the beginning and the bathroom to be right next to the kitchen, I guess. So let's try with the bathroom first. So the grid rows, they won't change because we want the same height. We just want it sitting next to the kitchen, and the kitchen is at where is it? So grid column 4 and 6. So from column 4 to column 6. So our bathroom needs to end at column 4, and it is, wait, how much it was? I don't remember. It was 2, so it end at 4 and start at 3. Okay, and we want the closet to start at 1 and end at 3, and also the, what was it, bedroom to start at 1 and end at 3. Yeah, so this way we've moved the bathroom next to the kitchen. Pretty cool stuff. Alright, so we're done with that, and onto the grid area, which is nothing but a few grid cells, or a single grid cell can also be a grid area. Thank you for whoever subscribed. Thank you, my guy. You now know how to position your grid items using row and column lines, but there are other ways to position your items, and this is where things can get a little confusing. There is an either short or a shorthand for positioning grid items with start and end lines. You can combine grid row start, grid column start, grid row end and grid column end into one line using grid area. Our living room above can be written out like this. So this is actually really cool. I really like this one. You just have to remember that this is row start, column start, row end, column end. You just have to remember which is which, and by doing this you can merge 4 properties into just one line, or 2 properties into one line. But grid area can also refer to a few different things. Instead of using the grid lines to position all the items in the grid, you can create a visual layout of the grid in words. To do this, we give each item on the grid a name using grid area. So our living room can be written like this: grid area living room. So I guess this will not change the positioning, but only give it a name. We could do this for all of our grid items and give each room a grid area value as a name. Then we can map out the whole structure with the grid container using grid template areas. Wait, so HTML, we have the same rooms. The result, alright, so they've switched around. But here, what did they do? Container display inline grid. They did the, again, template with columns 5 by 5 and grid template area. So they did living room, living room, living room, living room, living room. I guess each one represents like a cell. So, and there are 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then after that, so yes, indeed, this is the first row. This again, this is the it's a bit hard to selected, but this is the second row, and this is the whole like living room area that takes up 2 rows. Next one is bedroom, another cell for bedroom, a cell for bathroom, cell for kitchen, and another for kitchen. Next row it's the same. After that, are there only, no, 1 2 3 4, yeah, the fifth one, final one, is closet bathroom. So they're writing it out instead of all this positioning that they're doing here with the numbers. They're using the names, so they're giving each ID a grid area name, and they're doing the positioning this way just by writing them out, which is, I guess, it's you have more to write. I feel like this is the best way to do it, because you can just open the developer tools if you don't fully get it and you come to understand it. But if you have to look at this, then I think it's a bit more confusing, although it's simply in English. So they say, wow, you might want to open up the CodePen browser now and make it large enough to really read the grid template area layout line by line. But this tool gives us a completely different way to position items. We can even use a dot to indicate empty cells. Say our apartment might be getting a water heater and washer dryer. We might not be sure of the exact layout, but we can visualize some space easily by removing more room in the bathroom and kitchen. So what are they doing here? After the closet, on the last one, they're adding 3 dots, and this is removing from the bathroom and the kitchen, which is I guess it's cool. What if you wanted to add dots? I guess you can just name them like a dot. Alright, but this is cool. So now you know 2 very different ways of using grid area on a grid item. You might even see the term grid area refer to a group of cells. For example, all the grid cells of the living room together is a grid area. The apartment analogy should help. A grid item can take up multiple cells, forming an area of the grid, much like a room with 4 walls in an apartment. And as you go through the assignments, you will come across more terminology like span and auto when positioning grid items across tracks. There are also properties to justify and align grid items similar to flexbox. Best ways to learn all this terminology and how to position items with lots of practice. Alright, so we have an MDN article that's probably going to be quite long. After that we have exercises to do, which I'm really pumped about. Is this the same one that we looked at? Grid layout using line-based placement. Is it the same one that we looked at yesterday? I think so. No, I think it's a little bit different. Wait, let me double check the recording from yesterday. I don't think it's exactly the same article. No, it's not the same article. Alright, it has similar visuals, but it's not the same. Alright, so I'm just going to get rid of the sidebars and the header and then we can start reading through this. Oh, come on. Alright, let me remove those. And the header. Okay, zoom in a little bit, and that should be good. Alright, we again have a lot to read. Those MDN articles are quite long, but they're very they give you a lot of knowledge and understanding, which is ultimately what we're going for, so I have no reason to be upset. We're going to read through it, and after that, the good thing is that we're going to make some exercises. So grid layout using line-based placement. In the article covering the basic concepts of a grid layout, we started to look at how to position items on a grid using line numbers. In this article, we'll fully explore this fundamental feature of the specification works. How? Alright. Starting your exploration of grid with numbered lines is the most logical place to begin, because when you use grid layout, you always have numbered lines. The lines are numbered for columns and rows and are indexed from 1. Note that grid is indexed according to the writing mode of the document in a left to right language, such as English. Line 1 is on the left hand side of the grid. If you're working in a right to left language, such as Arabic, then line 1 will be the far right of the grid. We'll learn more about the interaction between writing modes and grids in a later guide. A basic example, as a very simple example, we can take a grid with 3 column tracks and 3 row tracks. This gives us 4 lines in each dimension. Inside our grid container, we have 4 child elements. If we do not place these on the grid in any way, they will lay out according to the auto placement rules. 1 item in each of the first 4 cells. If you use Firefox Grid Highlighter, you can see how the grid has defined columns and rows. Alright, so we can skip through this. We know this already. So positioning items by line number. We can use line-based placement to control where these items sit on the grid. We would like the first item to start at the far left of the grid and span a single column track. It should also start on the first row line at the top of the grid and span to the 4th row line. So this one should take like an entire column, I guess. As you position some items, other items on the grid will continue to be laid out using the auto placement rules. We'll take a proper look at how these work in a later guide, but you can see as you work that grid is laying out unplaced items into empty cells of the grid. Addressing each item individually can place all 4 items spanning row and column tracks. Note that we can leave cells empty if we wish. One of the very nice things about grid layout is the ability to have white space in our designs without having to push things around using margins to prevent floats from rising up into the space we have left. Alright, so they're basically doing the positioning for all of them in this way. As I said, this first one will take an entire column, and from then on they're just setting start lines and end lines. This is something that we've looked at already. Now they're showing the shorthand properties. We have quite a lot of code here to position each item. It should come as no surprise to know there is a shorthand. The grid column start and grid column end properties can be combined into grid column and grid row. and they're showing now with the shorthand, giving the exact same results. Now they're not showing the grid area yet, which is my favorite, but default spans. In the above examples, we specified every end row and column line in order to demonstrate the properties. However, in practice, if an item only spans one track, you can omit the grid column end and grid row end value. Grid defaults to spanning one track. Default spans with longhand placement. This means our initial longhand example would look like this. So they're just, if it spans one line, they're skipping that. So as you can see, for box 3 is much shorter than the other ones, because, and they're also shorter as well, because most of them span one track, but for box 3, which I'm not sure which one is it, this one, it is shorter, because as you can see, just one column and one row, so it's only one box. And this is 2 rows, this is 3 rows, this is more columns. Although I think this one you can for the 4th one you can also remove, no, they did it already. I was just going to say you can remove the grid row end, but they've done it. Alright, default spans with shorthand placement. Our shorthand would look like the following code, with no forward slash and second value for item spanning one track only. So as you can see, even better now. The grid area property, we can take things a step further and define each area with a single property. Grid area, the order of values for grid area are as follows. So grid row start, grid column start, grid row end, grid column end. So you're starting from row start, column start, row end, column end. Okay, and I'm wondering now if you can omit here the ones that span just once. How do you say it? Default spans, if you can omit them from the grid area. This order of values for grid area can seem a little strange. It is the opposite of the direction in which we specify margin and padding as a shorthand. For example, it may help to realize that this is due to grid using the 4 relative directions defined in the CSS writing module specification. We will explore how grids work with writing modes in a later article. However, we have the concept of 4 flow relative directions, so box start, box end, inline start, inline end. We're working in English, a left to right language. Our box start is the top row line of the grid container, box end is the final row line of the container. Our inline start is the left hand column, and the inline start, as inline start is always the point from which the text would be written in the current writing mode. Inline end is the final column line of our grid. When we specify our grid area using the grid area property, we first define both start lines, so box start and inline start, then both end lines like block end and inline end. This seems unusual at first, as we're used to the physical properties of top, right, bottom and left, but makes more sense if you start to think of website as being multi-directional in writing mode. Okay, counting backwards. So this is something that I haven't understood yet, so hopefully we'll do now. We can also count backwards from the block and inline end of the grid. For English, that would be right hand column line and final row line. These lines can be addressed as -1, so we can also count backwards from the block and inline end of the grid. So for the end items we can count backwards, it seems like. These lines can be addressed as -1 and you can count back from there. So the second last line is -2. The second last line It is worth noting that the final line is the final line of the explicit grid. The grid defined by grid template columns and grid template rows does not take into account any rows and columns added in the implicit grid outside of that. Alright, so that's a bit to take in. In this next example, we have flipped the layout we were working with by working from the right and bottom of our grid when placing the items. So we still have the same thing, but this one is a little bit harder to understand. So why is box 1, for example, grid column start -1? This is the same but inverted, I see. So if you have 1 here, you have -1 here. If you have 2 here, you have -2 here, and so on. So it's from -1 to -2. I get it now. It's not that complicated. Sure. Stretching an item across the grid. So this is really clever, because sometimes maybe if you're using JavaScript, you wouldn't know how big your grid will be. So putting it as 1, the slash -1 will span through the whole grid, and you wouldn't have to know how many lines there are. Okay, gutters or alleys. The CSS grid specification includes the ability to add gutters between column and row tracks with the column gap and row gap properties. These specify a gap that acts much like column gap property in multi-column layout. Note when grid first shipped in browsers, the column gap and row gap there were prefixed, so we learned about this already yesterday. So you can skip that. Gaps only appear between tracks of the grid. They do not add space to the top and bottom, left to right of the container. We can add gaps to our earlier example by using the properties on the grid container. So on the container itself, you add column gap, for example, or row gap, and you get that effect. Or shorthand, just gap and do column first and do row first and then column. Is that it? Yeah, I think so. The two properties can be also expressed as shorthand gap. If you only give one value for gap, it will apply to both column and row gaps. If you specify two values, the first is used for row gap and the second one for column gap. In terms of line-based positioning of items, the gap acts as if the line has gained extra width. Anything starting at that line starts after the gap, and you cannot address the gap or place anything into it. If you want gutters to act more like regular tracks, you can of course define a track for the purpose instead. Using the span keyword, so the span we haven't read anything about yet. In addition to specifying the start and end lines by number, you can specify a start line and then the number of tracks you would like an area to span. A number of tracks, alright. Yo, what's up? Eltho, sorry if I butchered your name. What is up, my brother? Thank you for joining the stream. Really appreciate you learning a bit about CSS Grid, and we're going to make some exercises after that. So you can say the grid rows start at 1 and then spans 3 tracks. Is that it? So for box 1, yeah, it will start at row 1 and span 3 tracks. So 1, 2, 3 tracks. For box 2, let's say it again row starts at 1 and spans 2 tracks this time. Box 3 we don't use because it only spans 1 track each. For the box 4 we have for the columns, it starts at line 2 and spans 2 tracks, so 1 track, 2 tracks. Alright, perfect. Thanks for joining the stream. You can also use the span keyword in the value of grid row start and grid row end and grid column start, grid column end. The following two examples will create the same grid area. In the first we set the start row line, and then the end line we specify that we want the area to cover 3 tracks. The area will start at line 1 and end 3 lines from line 1. That is, the area will end at line 4. So indeed, we looked at this already. In the second example, we specify the end row line. So yeah, basically the same, but for the rows. Grid row start, span 3. Span upwards from the specified row line. In the second example, we specify the end row line we want the item to finish at, and then set line. So it starts from 4, it's like backwards then, and spans 3 to the left from line 4. Alright. To become familiar with line-based positioning in grid, try building a few common layouts by placing items onto grids with varying numbers of columns. Remember that if you don't place all of the items, any leftover items will be placed according to the auto placement rules. This may result in the layout you want, but if something is appearing somewhere unexpected, check that you have set a position for it. Also remember that line items on the grid can overlap each other when you place them explicitly like this. That can create some nice effects. However, you can also end up with things overlapping incorrectly if you specify the wrong start or end line. The Firefox Grid Helper, yada yada. So we're done with that MDN article, and we're now going to the exercises in the CSS exercise repository. Don't forget that the instructions are in the readme. So we're doing just the first exercise, which is basic holy grail. Note, when doing this exercise, please use all the documentation and resources you need to accomplish it. You are not intended to have any of this stuff memorized at this point. Check the docs, use Google, do what you need to besides checking the solutions to get them done. Alright, perfect. So this is the fun part, and I'm not sure if we forked this already. Did we? I have to check. Sorry, 1 second. I have to check the repositories, but where is it? JavaScript exercises. No, we don't have this forked. So how do you do that? Intermediate HTML, CSS exercises. I think from here you need to fork it. Create new fork. So CSS exercise is available, create fork. Alright, perfect. We have it now, and this is my repository, SSH. Let's do cd into repos and git clone. Then after that, where do we need to go? cd into CSS, cd into intermediate, and else what do we have? Advanced grid positioning grid. What was the exercise? It was in positioning grid. Okay, so cd into positioning grid. Else what do we have in here? do1. So I can just cd into 01 and ls. Yeah, here we have it, hot dot. Alright, let's see what we need to do. Okay, let me move that. We don't need it for now. got the terminal and Google Chrome on the other side. Now we have a PNG of the desired outcome. So we're doing like a website layout with an article, navbar, header, sidebar, footer, perfect, readme. We have the instructions in the readme. Alright, so now it's time to practice the grid tools we've learned and create a layout that might seem familiar. We're going to make a holy grail layout like the one we created using Flexbox. The difference here is that we won't be relying on Flexbox for this exercise. We'll only be using grid. You'll be able to see the benefits of grid for yourself. Can I zoom this in? That doesn't work. Alright, anyways, hopefully you can read it. Yeah, this works. Okay. You only need to add the CSS selectors. So those are the hints. You only need to add the CSS selectors. Look back at the creating a grid lesson if you forget how to turn an element into a grid. Use fixed track sizes, for example pixels, for your columns and rows. Here's the desired outcome, we already saw it. Self-check, the gap is 15 pixels, the grid has 2 columns. Let me open this again. So 2 columns indeed, okay. The second column is 3 times larger than the first. The third row is 5 times larger than the others. The header and footer elements span across both columns. The sidebar element only spans across the first column. The nav and article elements span across the second column. Alright, so let's open up the HTML and go live so we can actually see what we're doing. And we already have everything, which is pretty good. And we only have to go into the styles and change up some of this. So the container, excuse me, going to here, also need the styles. Container holds everything, so container has to be the grid element, header, sidebar, nav, article and footer. And in here we have container and container div. So this we don't have to touch it, I guess. My best friend can prepare group Discord, YouTube channel Discord. I have one to join you. I don't have a Discord yet. I haven't thought about that, but maybe we can do one so we can hang in there. That's a good idea actually. I've never thought of it, but after the stream maybe I'll think about it and we can have a Discord. That's a pretty good idea. Thanks for joining the stream also, my guy. Alright, so the container needs to be a display grid. This is for sure. And also here we have to make grid template columns to be 2 columns, or actually we have to set it as 1 FR and 2 FR, and grid template rows. They said to use absolute units actually, so I'm not sure if we should use FR units because the second column is 3 times larger than the first. That's okay, but wait, let me save this, see how it's going to look. It is indeed 2 times larger, but they said to use absolute units. Use fixed track sizes, in example pixels, for your columns and rows. I don't know why, but at least for the columns I'm going to use FR. Why not? Also for the, wait, let me check the desired outcome again. For the rows also I guess you can use fractional units. 1, 2, how much is that going to be? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, like 7 rows. Yeah, I'm not too sure. How are you going to calculate that? Do they have a hint for that? The second column is the third row is 5 times larger than the others. Alright, so they said the third row is 5 times larger, so this one is 5 times larger, and we have 6, 7, 8, so we have 8 rows essentially. So we can do grid template rows and do 1 fr, 1 fr, 5 fr, 1 fr. Will that do it? Wait, let me see again. So we have 8 here and 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, I think that will be it. Then we have a gap. The gap is 15 pixels, so we can set this right off the bat. Do gap, do 15 pixels. There we have the gap. What else? The grid has it says the grid has 4 rows. Here they say it not 7 but 4. Okay, so we have 4 rows, but the third, I mean yes, it does have 4 rows, so you can see it here, like 1, 2, 3, 4. Indeed. Oh, I'm kind of stupid for that. Okay, so we do have 4 rows, and how do we make the third one 5 times larger than the other ones? Do we kind of do it the same way? So 1 fr, 1 fr. No, I've done it the right way. This is 4 rows, 1, 2, 3, 4, and the third one is like 5 times larger than the others, if that's correct, but I think so. Okay. Any other hints? I don't think so. Okay, so now we're going to make the header, for example, start at row line 1, column line 1, and end at the last column line. We can also do this for the footer. So header and footer, we're kind of doing the same thing. Where do we say that? Why is the footer actually bigger than my header and so on? We'll see it in a minute, but header needs to start from what was it? Grid column, and from 1 till -1. Was that it? Yeah, there you go. Also, I need this for the footer. So now, as you can see, at least the header and footer, they are spanning through the whole width. What else do we need? We need the sidebar start from. It is still taking up 1 track, but it starts from grid row 2 and it ends at grid row 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Yes, okay. So where is the sidebar, right? So sidebar, we need to find it. Sidebar, it needs to start from grid row 2 and end at grid row 4. So actually have it done already, is that it? Yes, it looks like it. So I don't think we have to make the other ones already. By positioning the header, footer and sidebar, we've moved everything else into place, but I guess just to make everything right, I'm going to do the navigation and article as well. So can we use grid area for the nav bar. I also don't have to look at the template anymore because I have it done already. So we start with row start, then column start. So row start is 2, so 1, 2. Column start is 1, column start is 2. Then row end is 3 and column end is 4. So no, hooray, you did it. Yep. Thank you so much, but yeah, seems like I messed it up. What did I mess up? So grid area, so we start with grid row start, grid column start, grid row end, and grid column end. So why didn't that work? We have a grid area, and let me do it first by using I'm going to just comment this one out for now, save it, and let me try using the longer version, so the shorthands, grid column for example, and let's say 2 and 3. So this will work indeed. And then grid row, we want it from 2 till 3 again. So that works. Here I have done something wrong. I have put it in at 4 and I need to put it at 3 actually, so my logic is wrong. And this should work now. Yep, perfect. Alright, let's do the article. Also use grid area, and we'll start from grid row 1, 2, 3. We'll start from 3, start the column from 2, then end the row at 1, 2, 3, 4, end it at 4, and also the column will end it at 3. So yeah, indeed, it's giving me the same result, but I just want to explicitly declare where everything is going. And we've done it. It wasn't too hard. I'm actually kind of surprised how easily I'm understanding CSS Grid, because back in the days when I was learning to code and do websites, at least front-end designs and so on, when I was younger, Grid I couldn't understand it, and right now it just seems very intuitive and really easy. But I guess I didn't read back then. I just couldn't read long articles and documentation, and I guess that was my flaw there. So now we can just git add all, git commit, so we can say did the exercise on CSS Grid from the Odin project, and we can save it and push it, and we'll at least have one commit for today. Git push. Perfect. So we're done with that. It was pretty fun actually. I don't think we're going to do more exercise, so I can close the code editor for now, and if we need it later I'm going to reopen it. We can close also these. What else do we have? So we did the assignments. Let's check out the additional resources. CSS Garden. So this game I couldn't finish back in the day when I tried it. So they say play through levels 1 through 17. It has 28 levels. So I'm pretty excited to play this actually on stream. Let's see how far I can go. This, if you don't know, is a game where you can practice your CSS Grid skills. There is also another game called CSS actually Flexbox Froggy, and I showed it last stream. it's pretty cool, but this is grid garden, so you have to change the positioning of this water to water the plants, I guess, or the carrots here. Let's read through it. Probably it's going to be a bit harder for you, but I'm going to read this out loud. Welcome to Grid Garden, where you write CSS code to grow your carrot garden. Water only the areas that have carrots by using the grid comb start property. For example, grid comb start 3 will water the area at the third vertical grid line, which is another way of saying the third vertical border from the left in the grid. So 1, 2, 3, yeah. So water, and we can just say grid comb, and I think we can just write 3 and leave it at that, because it only spans one track, so it doesn't seem like it. Grid comb start 3 node, grid comb start 3. So I've written it exactly the same way. The answer is actually here on top, but grid comb start, grid comb, I've misspelled comb. Alright, anyways, there is no autocorrect here, but okay. This looks like weeds are growing in the corner of your garden. Use grid comb start to position the item. Note that the weeds start from the 5th vertical grid line, so this will be the same, but with 5 instead of 3. So I don't know what this does, but it gets rid of the weeds, it seems like. When grid comb start is used alone, the grid item by default will span exactly one comb. However, you can extend, yeah. So we already know this. We can use grid column end and do, what is it, 1, 2, 3, 4, and we can pass on to the next level. Perfect. So this is, we have grid column start at 5, and we want the grid column to end at 1, 2. So we're doing it in reverse this time, it seems like. Okay, perfect. We're watering the carrots. This I don't know why they give us so many exercises about what is that? Wait, now because it's a start, I don't want start button end. Yeah, so I don't know why they're giving us so many exercises with start and end, but yeah, it's pretty easy by now. Alright, now try setting grid column start to a negative value, so this will be -3, I believe. Grid column start -3, yep, indeed. Because this is -1, if you can see, this is -2 and this is -3, and to start from -3, span one track, and we were able to get rid of the weed. Instead of defining a grid item based on the start and end positions of the grid lines, you can define it based on your desired column width using the span keyword. Keep in mind that span only works with positive values. So for example, water these carrots with the rule grid column end span 2. So they're already giving us the answer. I don't know why, but probably we're going to have more levels with this span. It will span 2 tracks. So grid column end, and this has to span 1, 2, like 5 tracks. Is that it? 6, it seems like. Although you have 5 tracks, it must span 6. Oh, I didn't put the span, of course. Yeah, now it will span 5 tracks. Okay. You can also use the span keyword with grid column start to set your items width relative to the end position. So This is kind of a reverse situation. We start from grid column N6, so from right here, and we need the grid column start to span 3 times. So grid column start, and we do span 3, and this will water the carrots. Perfect. I feel like a gardener already. Try typing both grid column start and grid column end. Grid column shorthand. Alright, so do this with the grid column. They want us to use the shorthand now, so this will be 1, 2, 3, 4. So from 4 till 5, no 6. Okay, I'm wondering if there is a better way to, without inspecting it, to remember which one. Yeah, I don't know. The span keyword also works with this shorthand, so give it a try. So grid column, and we'll set the start from 2 and then do span 3. Perfect, that's really cool. This I can say for now is it's easier than Flexbox Froggy, the other game. Now they want to do the row, so grid row start and also 3, I guess. Yeah. Next, grid row, they want to use the shorthand, so start at 3 and end at 6. Okay. Do the widths now, so they want us to use grid column and grid row. Let's start with grid row. We want from the 5th, and grid column, and I'm not setting a second value because it only spans, it's only one box, so I don't need to grid column 2, and there you go. Okay. Wow, okay, grid column and grid row again, so grid column, oops, I forgot the dash, column, we need to start at line 2 and end at, we can do -1, and also for grid row we can do from 1 till -1. -1 is the last grid row and grid column. Okay, they want us to use the grid area, so we start at row, which is 1, then column, which is 2, then we have row end, which is 4, and column end, which is -1. Perfect. Okay. How about multiple items? You can overlap them without any trouble. Use grid area to define a second area that covers all of the unwatered carrots. Hi everyone, Ria Yadav, thank you for joining the stream. Thank you for the support. How is your day going so far? So water 2, we do grid area, and we have to water these carrots here, so we start from row 2, then we go on to then we go to column 3, we end at 5, and the column ends at -1. Okay, this was already level 17, but if you want we can go through the rest of them because I really like the game. If the grid items aren't explicitly placed with grid area, grid column or grid row, they're automatically placed according to their order in the source code. We can override this using the order property, which is one of the advantages of the of grid over table based layout. By default, all grid items have an order of 0, but this can be set to any positive or negative value similar to the index. Right now, the carrots in the second column are being positioned and the weeds in the last column are being watered. Poisoned, not positioned, sorry. Change the order value of the position to fix this right away. Alright, so poison right now has to have an order value. The order we haven't learned already, so I can see why they want to do just level 17, but basically what that means, water has an order of 0. It's like the index. It's not like 0, 1, 2, 3 like an index, but it has a value of 0, so this whole thing will be 0 and the next one will be 1, and it doesn't matter if I do 1, 2, 3, 4 and so on, it just has to be bigger than 0. So we can write 1 here and move on to the next. Alright, this is pretty similar order, but this time -1 because it has to be lower than 0. Okay, grid garden. Up to this point you've had your garden set up as grid with 5 columns, each 20% of the full width, and 5 rows, each 20% of the full height. This was done with the rules grid template column and grid template rows for 20%. Each row has 5 values which create 5 columns, each set to 20% of the overall width of the garden, but you can set the grid up however you like. The grid template column a new value to water your give grid template columns a new value to water your carrots. You want to set the width of the first column to be 50%. Alright, so they want us to change grid template columns, and we have to do 50% for the first one, and I guess 50%. So this way we're just changing the structure where in the beginning, as you can see implicitly, we created 5 rows, but in order to water the carrot up until here, we had to change it to be half of the garden. I'm wondering what will happen if we do. Yeah, we can still do like it will not let us. So 50-50. I didn't see your message, sorry. Is there a way to? No. Yeah, I don't know how to see your message, sorry, I missed it. Alright, but we can move on to the next. Now, specifying a bunch of columns with identical widths can get tedious. There is a repeat function to help with that. For example, we previously defined 5 20% columns. This can be simplified with the repeat, so we've already read about this in the NDN article. Grid template columns with repeat functions create 8 columns, each with 12.5% width, so we can use grid template columns and do repeat of 8 and 12.5%, and there you go. Next, grid template columns doesn't just accept values in percentages but also length units like pixels and EMs. You can even mix different units together. Here set 3 columns to 100 pixels, 3 EM and 40 pixels respectively. So grid template columns and 100 pixels. You don't have to put colons or commas actually, sorry, 40%. And there you go. Move on to the next. Cool, we're already on level 23. Grid also introduces a new unit, the fractional unit FR. Each FR unit allocates one share of the available space. For example, if two elements are set to 1 FR and 3 FR respectively, the space is divided into 4 equal shares. The first element occupies a fourth of the second element and 3/4 of the left. The first element occupies 1/4 and the second element occupies 3/4 of the leftover space. Or actually it occupies all of the leftover space, because it's not 3/4 of the left of any leftover space, because this will leave empty space. If you have 3/4 of an empty space and you take 3/4, there will still be 1/4 of empty space. So it occupies all of the empty space. Here the widths make up 1/6 of your first row and carries the remaining 5/6. Create two columns. Alright, so we need grid template columns of 1 FR and 6 FR. Was that it? 5 actually. Perfect. Move on to the next. When columns are set with pixels, percentages or EMs, any other columns set with FR will divvy up the space that's left over. Here the carets form a 50 pixel column on the left and the widths a 50 pixel column on the right. So what we have to do is grid template columns. We have to set 50 pixels for the carets, then 1 FR and 50 pixels for the widths. Is that it? No. Why doesn't this work? 50 pixels? No. Why 1 FR doesn't work? Make 3 more columns. So 3 FR. No. To make 3 more columns, take up the remaining space and use FR to make 3 more. 3 more columns that take up the remaining space in between. So they have to be in between, and they say use FR to make 3 columns. So 1 FR, 1 FR, 1 FR. So that works indeed. I wonder why we couldn't just do one. Why do I have to have like 3 columns here? Can I not just have one? I'm not sure, but anyways. Let's move on. Okay, now there is a 75 pixel column of weeds on the left side of your garden. 3/5 of the remaining space is growing carrots, while 2/5 has been overrun with weeds. So it has to be 75 pixels, 3/5 and then 2/5. Use grid template columns with combination of pixels and FR units to make the necessary columns. Grid template columns, and we have to make 75 pixels, which will take care of the weeds. Then can we do 3 FR and 2 FR? Yep, that works pretty fine. Super. Almost done here, 26 out of 28. Grid template rows works much like grid template columns. Use grid template rows to water all but the top 50 pixels of your garden. Know that the water is set to fill only your 5th row, so you need to create 5 rows in total. Grid template rows. I'm not sure why do I have to create 5 rows. Can I just do 1 FR and 50 pixels? It doesn't seem like it. So 1 FR, 1 FR, 1 FR, 1 FR. No, that doesn't work. Alright. Note that the water is set to fill only your 5th row, so you need to create 5 rows in total. And the top one is all but the top 50 pixels of your garden. So we actually have to start with the 50 pixels. Just 1 second. Alright, so use the grid template. Right now the water starts from grid column 1 to 6, so it spans through whole width, and that's where they're saying it starts from grid row 5 and ends at 6. So that's interesting. Do they want me to make like 5 small ones here and the 6th one be one big one? Well, so 50 pixels and then wait, I think I have to do what is it, 10 pixels, 10 pixels, 10 pixels, 10 pixels, so something like this, 10 pixels. No, that doesn't work anymore. And that is 40 pixels, so what they have to be 12.5, is that it? 12.5, 12.5, 12.5. Quick maths. So yeah, that was the catch. The first rows needed to be really small because as you can see here, the water starts at grid row 5 and ends at 6. So this whole thing has to be one big row. Okay. Grid template is a shorthand property that combines grid template rows and grid template columns. For example, grid template 50%, 50%, 200 pixels will create a grid with 2 rows that are 50% each and 1 column that is 200 pixels wide. Try using grid template to water an area that includes the top 60% and left 200 pixels of your garden. So we have to make grid template. Is it that easy of just writing 60% and then 200 pixels? Yes, it is. Perfect. And this is the last level. That's pretty cool. Your garden is looking great. Here you've left a 50 pixel path at the bottom of your garden and filled the rest with carrots. Unfortunately, the left 20% of your carrots have been overrun with weeds. Use CSS Grid one last time to treat your garden. So this is on the garden. So here we have to say grid template, and what do we have to do? Start with the rows and then the columns, and wait, so if we say 1FR, so we only have like 1 row and we only need 2 columns. So first 50 pixels and 1FR, will that work? Alright, it doesn't work. So why doesn't it work? Because they say here you've left a 50 pixel path at the bottom of your garden, and fill the rest with carrots. So this is the 50 pixel path, so 1FR and 50 pixels. So that works, but this has to be 20%. 20%. There you go. So that was the last level, and I'm pretty proud of myself because, as I said before, when I tried to learn grid many years ago, I couldn't get past those levels, and now with just a little bit of reading and understanding, I was able to go through it, and you can do it too, no matter the subject, if you just adopt a growth mindset and you start reading and believing that you understand eventually and you'll be able to learn. You're going to smash it. Like, I'm pumped about you guys, but for now we have just two more articles and we're going to be done with this. I'm not even sure if we'll need to read through those, because as you can see we're doing pretty good, and I feel like I understand grid at a good level. So I don't know if we'll be reading through the whole of it, but I have been going at it for an hour and a half already, so I'll take a 10-minute break. Thank you all of you guys for sitting here with me. I'm taking 10 minutes and I'll be right back. Thank you. Let's go. I'm back. We only have 2 articles to go through. Hopefully they're not too long. Doesn't seem like it, so maybe it's an 11-minute read. Okay, this one maybe a bit shorter. Maybe we already know most of the stuff, but regardless, I like to go through all the additional resources, and this is not going to be an exception. So let's see. In this new series, Rachel Andrew breaks down the CSS grid layout specification. This time, Rachel Andrew will learn how to use the grid template areas property to define placement on the grid and find out how to how the property really works. If you haven't used this layout model before, give it a try. We find it's a lovely way to experiment with layouts and often use it when prototyping a layout, even if for one reason or another we'll ultimately use a different method for the production version. So I didn't like the font there, it was quite hard to use. When using CSS grid layout, you can always place items from one grid line to another. However, there is an alternate way of describing your layout, one that is visual in nature. In this article, we'll learn how to use the grid template areas property to define placement on the grid and find out how the property really works. In case you missed the previous article in this series, so yada yada, so skip through this one and we go on to describing layout with grid template areas. The grid template areas property accepts one or more strings as value. Each string enclosed in quotes represents a row of your grid. You can use the property on a grid that you have defined using grid template rows and grid template columns, or you can create your layout, in which case all rows will be auto-sized. The following property and value describe a grid with 4 areas, each spanning 2 column tracks and 2 row tracks. An area is caused to span multiple tracks by repeating the name in all of the cells that you would like to cover. So imagine this like the whole area, and this each word is a single cell. So you have 1 1 2 2 1 1 2 2, and this is like makes up one area, this and second area, third area, fourth area, so on. This is like a visual example of the grid. Items are placed into the layout by being named with an indent using the grid area property. Therefore, if you want to place an element with a class of test into the area of the grid named 1, use the following CSS grid area 1. You can see this in action in the CodePen example shown below. I have 4 items with classes 1 to 4. These are assigned to the relevant grid area using the grid area property and therefore display on the grid in the correct boxes. So as you can see, 1 1 2 2 and so on and so forth. Exactly what we saw above. If you use Firefox Grid Inspector, then you can see the area names and the grid lines, demonstrating that each item does indeed span 2 row and 2 column tracks, all without doing any line-based positioning on the item itself. Rules for using grid template areas. There are a few rules when creating a layout in this way. Breaking the rules will make the value invalid and therefore your layout will not happen. The first rule is that you must describe a complete grid. In example, every cell on your grid must be filled. If you want to leave a cell or cells empty, you do this by inserting a dot or a series of dots such as ... with no space between them. Therefore, if I change the value of grid template areas as follows, now I have 2 cells with no content in them. Item 3 only displays the last row of the grid. So as you can see, we've taken 2 cells of the third area. You can only define each area once, meaning that you can't use this property to copy content into 2 places on the grid, so the following value would be invalid and cause the entire property to be ignored, as we have duplicated the area 3. So as you can see, 3 is used right here and here again, so it has to be like, they have to be adjacent to each other, it seems like. You can't create non-rectangular area, so the property can't be used to create like an L or T-shaped area, making the following value also invalid. But I guess this is also true for every way of defining the grid. Netlify, this is a really cool art. It just catches the eye. Take a game with a 3D game built with Netlify. 5 million devs.netlify. Wow. Did they use 3JS for that? It's really cool. I got carried, but that's really cool. There was a game that was called Balance back in the day, and this reminds me of it. That's really cool. Okay. Formatting the strings, I like to display the value of grid template areas as I have above, with each string representing a row below the row before. This gives me a visual representation of what the layout will be. To help with this, it is valuable to add additional white space characters between each cell. Also use multiple dot characters denoting empty space, empty cells. So instead of using just one dot, they say use a lot of dots, so it's you can read it better. In the value below, I have used multiple white space characters between smaller words, also multiple dot characters, so the empty cells line up. So in order for it to line up better, they use multiple spaces here and here, for example, and between 3 and 4 they used one, so they make the grid visually, so it's easier to understand and read, and as you can see, it's much easier than that. That said, it's completely valid to have all of the strings on one line, so we could write our example as follows, alright? But it's just much harder to understand, and yeah, I don't know why would you do that. Explaining grid template areas and grid area. The reason that each area needs to be complete rectangle is that it needs to be the same shape that you could create by using line-based placement. Thanks for the advice you gave earlier before the break, really appreciate it, man. Yeah, no worries, my guy. I think the best advice I have heard in recent times is adopting the growth mindset. So growth mindset, is there a good picture of that? People believe that their most basic abilities can be developed through dedication and hard work. So if there is a good picture explaining that, like, you'll probably not be able to read this one. Negative mindset, so I've learned it as it fixed mindset and growth mindset. So people with fixed mindset will say stuff like, this is too hard, I'm never going to be able to learn it, I don't know how, I cannot learn this, I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, so on. And this is all just limiting beliefs. This is not true except if you believe it. So whatever you believe essentially is true, and if you believe you're too dumb to learn something, it will be true for you. Also, if you change your belief and start thinking that with enough effort and reading and so on, you'll be able to learn it, that also will be true. So it all comes from the mindset, and adopting a growth mindset is what has helped me most in recent times. And I've heard about this before, but I've severely overlooked it, and I didn't understand the true potential of it and the true power. Right now, whatever you throw at me, I'll just chip at it and start learning little by little, and eventually you get the full picture, you get the skills you need, you get the knowledge, and you'll be able to achieve everything you set your mind to. It's just a point of mindset. So yeah, adopting a growth mindset is really the best thing you can do. I'm glad that it helped you, my guy. If you want, you can read up more about it. It's really fascinating. So yes, where we are. If we stick with our example above, we could make this layout with grid lines as in the next code pen. Here I have created my grid as before. This time, however, I use grid lines to create the positioning using the long hand grid column start, grid column end, and so on and so forth. We can see it in the CSS grid. He hasn't used the long hand, he used grid columns and rows. If you read my previous article, you know it is possible to use grid area as a shorthand. Alright, so we know this already, and I feel like we don't have to go through it again. What is this grid area 3? I think it's similar to grid row start 3, with all other values set to auto, so 1. Using grid area with idents. If you use ident, I'm not sure how you pronounce that, but which is what a named area is called in grid layout, then the grid area property also takes 4 lines. If you have named lines on your grid as described in understanding CSS grid, creating a grid container, then you can use these named lines in the same way as numbered lines. However, what happens when you miss off some lines is different to when you see indents and not numbers. Below I have created a grid with named lines and used grid area to place an item. So to be completely honest, I didn't understand most of this. So they're setting 1 start, 3 start, 1 FR, 1 FR. I think this is just a bit over the top, and I don't know how often you use that. But this means that we're missing the line name for grid comment. The spec says that in this situation grid comment should use a copy of grid column start. If grid comment and grid column start are identical, then the end line is thrown away and essentially the value is set to auto, so we span one track as in the numbered version. The same thing happens if we miss of the third value, grid row end. It becomes the same as grid row start and therefore becomes auto. So this is interesting. We already know that if the end is not specified, it will take up one track, but we weren't told why, and it seems like it is because if it's the same as this, if it's not specified, it will inherit the value from the start, and if they're identical, it will just span one track. So take a look at the CodePen example of how each grid area is used and how this then changes the layout of the item. This is just too much at this point. This then explains why grid area works with single value indent representing an area name. When we create a named area with the grid template areas property, the edge of each area can be referenced by a line name, which is the same as the area name used. In our case, we could take our named area 1 and place our item using named lines as follows. So grid row start 1 and 1, so on and so forth. This is interesting. Layering items when using grid template areas. Only one name can occupy each cell using grid template areas. However, you can still add additional items to the grid after doing your main layout in this way. You can use the numbered you can use line numbers unusual. Xander, thank you so much. Thank you for tuning the stream as well. Thank you, brother. In the below CodePen example, I have added an additional item and positioned it using line-based positioning over the items that are already positioned. So you define the template areas in this way, and after that, where is that 5? He starts from row 2 until row 4, so from here to here, and same also makes a rectangle, and it overlaps the gap as well, which is good to know. You can also use lines names defined when creating your usual columns on rows. Even better, you have some line names created by the formation of areas. We've already seen how you can get 4 line names with the name of the area. You can also get a line on the start edge of each area with start appended to the name of the area, and at the end edge of each area with the end appended. Therefore, the area named 1 has start edge lines named 1 start and end edge lines named 1 end. Holy shit. Alright. You can then use these implicit line names to place an item on the grid. This can be useful if you are referencing the grid at different breakpoints, as long as you always want the placed item to come after the certain line name. So for the 5, 1 start, grid also here behind the 5th element there is a 1, and they're saying that the 5th should start from 1 start, which is referencing line horizontal line 1, and should end at 3 end, which you can imagine if it's a 1 here, 2 here, there will be a 3 here, and it will end where the 3 ends. For the start, to start where the 3 starts, but can you also do 1? I cannot edit it, but I guess if you do 1 start and 4 start, it should be the same. So between 3 and 1, it's referencing the same column line, I guess, but I cannot change it to double check. Using grid templates areas in responsive design, I often work with building up components in a component library, and I find that using grid template areas can be helpful in terms of being able to see exactly what a component will look like from the CSS. It's also very straightforward to redefine the component at different breakpoints by redefining the value of grid template areas, sometimes in addition to changing the number of available column trunks. Mohsin KR, all of the best. Sorry if I butchered your name. Thank you so much, my brother. Really appreciate it. If you subscribed right now, thank you for subscribing as well. Really appreciate it. In the CSS below, I have defined a single column layout for my component. Next, at minimum width of 600 pixels, I redefine the number of columns and also the value of grid template areas in order to create a layout with 2 columns. The nice thing about this approach is that anyone looking at the CSS can see how that layout works. So let's see if we can see how this layout works. We have 1 column here with 4 rows, HD, BD, SD, FT, gap of 20 pixels, so on and so forth, and we have a media query at a minimum width of 600 pixels, so 600 pixels and above, we get a second column, and the FT spans the whole width. So indeed we can imagine how this works, and those are for the header, article, aside, and footer. Perfect. Accessibility, you need to be aware when using this method that there is it is very easy to move things around and cause the problem of disconnecting the visual display from the underlying source order. Anyone tabbing around the site or who is watching the screen while having the content spoken, we'll be using the order that things are in the source. By moving the display from that order, you could create a very confusing, disconnected experience. Don't use this method to move things around without also ensuring that the source is in a sensible order and matching the visual experience. So if you didn't get it, what they're saying is, if you have like let's say in the source code you're defined an article here and second article here, or second paragraph that you have to read, and after that, if you use this media query, as you can see, they will be right next to each other, and you can create a disconnect by the screen reader will read this and then move on to the footer, let's say. I don't know if it will work exactly like that, but you can mess up it will read them in the way the source code was written. So if you have article 1, article 2, so forth, article 1 could be at the bottom of the page, and then the screen reader will start reading article 2 that can be at the top of the page, let's say. So hope that makes sense. That's the lowdown on using the grid template area and grid area properties to create layouts. If you haven't used this layout method before, give it a try. I find it's a very lovely way to experiment with layouts and often use it when prototyping a layout, even if for one reason or another we'll ultimately use a different method for the production version. So this sentence was also at the beginning, but yeah, as you can see, here is the what is it? Yeah, here is the exact same sentence. But anyways, we're done with that, and this is the last article we have to read on this subject, and after that we can close the lesson on the Odin project. Let me get rid of the sidebars because they're a bit distracting, so we can focus on the content. Also this top banner, I don't need it. So this is the MDN article. I hope it's big enough. And it's about box alignment in grid layout. CSS Grid Layout implements the specification box alignment level 3, which I haven't heard of before. Is this like the box model, or yeah, I'm not reading through this, hopefully it makes sense. Which is the same standard Flexbox uses for aligning items in its Flex container. This specification details how alignment should work in all the different layout methods. Layout methods will conform to the specification where possible and implement individual behavior based on their differences, like features and constraints. While the specification currently specifies alignment details for all layout methods, browsers have not fully implemented of the specification. However, the CSS Grid Layout method has been widely adopted. So that was very abstract for someone that hasn't got a lot of knowledge like me, that I didn't understand much of it. This guide presents demonstrations of how box alignment in grid layout works. You see many similarities in how these properties and values work in Flexbox. Due to grid being two-dimensional and Flexbox being one-dimensional, there are some small differences that you should watch out for. So we'll start by looking at the two axes that we deal with when aligning things in a grid. The two axes of grid layout. When working with a grid layout, you have two axes available to align things against: the block axis and the inline axis. The block axis is the axis upon which blocks are laid out in block layout. If you have two paragraphs on your page, they display one below the other. This is the direction we describe as the block axis. So the block axis is vertical and the inline is horizontal. The inline axis runs across the block axis. It is the direction in which text in regular inline flow runs. We're able to align content inside grid areas, and the grid tracks themselves on these two axes. aligning items on the block axis. The align self and align items properties control alignment of the block axis. When we use these properties, we are changing the alignment of the item within the grid area you have placed it. Using align items, in the following example I have 4 grid areas within my grid. I can use the align items property on the grid container to align the items using one of the following values. So we have auto, normal, start, end, center, stretch, baseline, first baseline, last baseline. So I haven't heard about these values yet, so let's see what they do. We have a wrapper with display grid template columns, so 8 columns with same width, gap of 10 pixels, grid auto row, so any further rows will be 100 pixels. This is the template area, so they have A, B, C and D. Align items at the start. I don't know what align items start will do for display grid, but we'll be able to see it now. Item is grid area 1. Okay, this is the HTML, and can I change this? Yeah, seems like I can. I'm just trying to see what the align item start does. Align item start, so if we remove this, what will happen? Nothing. Oh no, alright. So they will take up the whole available space vertically. But if we say align item start, they will take up only what they need, I guess, or I'm not sure. Let's see if they have any explanation. Keep in mind that once you set align item start, the height of each child div will be determined by the contents of the div. So yeah, exactly. This in contrast to omitting align items completely, in which case the height of each div stretches to fill its grid area. The align items property says the align self property for all of the child grid items. This means that you can set the property individually by using align self on a grid item. Using align self, in this next example I'm using the align self property to demonstrate the differences, the different alignment values. The first area is showing the default behavior of align self, which is to stretch. The second item has an align self value to start, the third end, and the fourth is center. So yeah, pretty self-explanatory. First is no value, which it will stretch through the whole available space. The start will occupy exactly as much space as it needs for the div, for its contents, but at the start of the available space. The third is at the end of the available space, and the fourth is at the center. So pretty self-explanatory. Items with an intrinsic aspect ratio. The specification details that the default behavior in align self is to stretch, except for items which have an intrinsic aspect ratio. In this case, they behave as start. The reason for this is that if items with an aspect ratio are set to stretch, this by default would distort them. This behavior has now been clarified in the specification, with browsers yet to implement the correct behavior. Until that happens, you can ensure that items do not stretch, such as images, which are direct children of the grid, by setting align self and justify self to start. This will mimic the correct behavior once implemented. So I know grid came out quite late in 2016, but I don't know how old this article is and if that is fixed already. But I guess once we run into it, we'll Google it again, and if we need to, and we'll figure it out. Justifying items on the inline axis as align items and align self deal with the alignment of items on the block axis. Justify items and justify self do the same job on the inline axis. Did I say inline axis twice? I mean block axis for the first one. I don't know if I did. Anyways, the values you can choose from are the same as for align self, so we again have all the same values. You can see the same example as used for align items below. This time we're applying justify self property. Once again, the default is stretch, other than for items with an intrinsic aspect ratio. This means that by default grid items will cover their grid area unless you change that by setting an alignment. The first item in this example demonstrates this default alignment. So this is exactly the same, but for the vertical alignment, I guess. And this is pretty useful because this means we can center items within a grid without using flexbox, because I thought in the beginning that we need to make the grid as a layout and then each individual item inside of that grid, if you want to center it or move it around, so on and so forth, we'll have to use flexbox, which is not the case. And they do that by just using the same properties as in flexbox, basically. As with align self and align items, you can apply justify items to the grid container to set justify self value for all items. The justify self and justify items properties are not implemented in flexbox. This is due to one-dimensional nature of flexbox. We have justify content. I'm pretty sure we have justify items as well. Am I wrong? I'm not sure, but I think we do have these values in flexbox, so I don't know what that is. And that there may be multiple items along the axis, make it impossible to justify a single item. To align items along the main inline axis in flexbox, use the justify content property. So indeed, justify content. Shorthand properties. The place items property is the shorthand for align items and justify items. Place items, I like this one. The place self property is shorthand for align self and justify self. So center an item in an area. By combining the align and justify properties, we can easily center an item inside the grid area. So align self, justify self, center, or you can say place self, center. It will do the same thing. Aligning the grid tracks on the block axis. So aligning the grid tracks on the block axis. If you have a situation where your grid tracks use an area that is smaller than grid container, then you can align the grid tracks themselves inside of that container. Once again, this operates on the block and inline axis with align content, aligning tracks on the block axis, and justify content performing alignment on the inline axis. The place content property is shorthand for align content, and justify content. The values for align content, justify content, and place content are normal, start, end, center, stretch, space, around, space, between, space, evenly. We know this from flexbox. Baseline, first baseline, last baseline. In the below example, I have a grid container of 500 pixels by 500 pixels. I have defined 3 row and column tracks, each 100 pixels with 10 pixel gutter. This means that there is space inside the grid container, both in the block and inline direction. They mean unused space. The align content property is applied to the grid container and works on the entire grid. So I understand it now. It's like using flexbox, and align content will align the tracks themselves to be, let's say, space around them, not be right beside each other, but have space around them. And it says they have 10 pixel gutter, but if you use this, they have more space than that. The default behavior in grid layout is start, which is why our grid tracks are in the top left corner of the grid, aligned against the grid start line. So in the beginning we'll have that and setting and align content to end. It does it in the wrapper. Hi there, Miguel Nunez. Sorry if I butchered your name, brother. I'll quickly use Google Translate to see what you said. Do you stream every day? Yes, I try to stream every day, brother. Sometimes I miss a day, but it's generally every day that I stream. And if you just subscribe, thank you so much for the support. I really appreciate it, my brother. They set it on the whole wrapper container, and as you can see now, they're bound to the end of it. Space between, let's see how that is going to work. It only works on the vertical axis, as I can see. Let's see, it's worth noting that using this space distribution values might cause items on your grid to become larger. Wait, let me translate this also. Sorry, I have to use Google Translate, my guy. Google Translate. What you're learning to be full stack, HTML, CSS, and what happens after that. I'm learning JavaScript as well. We're just going through the Odin project, and the current lessons are on CSS, but also I've been learning JavaScript, and we did that on stream. If you check back the recordings, we've done already a few JavaScript projects, and after we're done with CSS Grid, I'm going back to JavaScript. If an item spans more than one grid track, as further space is added between the tracks, that item needs to become large to absorb the space. Is it possible to have full stack in 8 months? I think so, especially in my case where I've had some previous knowledge and previous learning, so I'm not a complete beginner, so I think it will be possible. We're always working in a strict grid, therefore if you decide to use these values, ensure that the content of your tracks can cope with the extra space, or that you have used alignment properties on the items to cause them to move to the start rather than stretch. Alright, so this with align content start, and this is space between, where the first batch is at the start and everything else at the end. Can we do every day an easy mission in lead code? I'm learning to. Yeah, definitely. When I go back to the JavaScript, we can maybe do one lead code a day. I have a repository in my GitHub for lead code questions, so we can tackle one day. I think that will be beneficial. But still, I don't know much about JavaScript, so I cannot use like maps or hash maps, so I forgot about the data structures. But yeah, I think it will be beneficial, so yeah, indeed, we can do that. In the below image, I have placed the grid with align content with a value of start alongside the grid. When align content has a value of space between, you can see that now items 1, 2, which span 2 row tracks, have taken on extra height as they gain the additional space added to the gap between those two tracks. So that's what they said, that elements can get bigger. Do you have a streak? You mean, I don't know what a streak is, but I guess it's doing lead code problems every day, and if that's the case, no, I don't have one. If that's a streak, at least I'm not sure what a streak is. Justifying the grid tracks on the inline axis. On the inline axis, we can use justify content to perform the same type of alignment that we used align content for in the block axis. Using the same example, I'm setting justify content to space around. This once again causes tracks to span more than one column track to gain extra space. I think Discord suggestions earlier would be beneficial, so we can all share our thoughts and experiences and also be study buddies. Yes, indeed, Supreme Overlord. Indeed, I thought the same, and I'll look into how you can do that, and probably we'll start a Discord. That would be really cool if we can all gather in one place and share our progress, and if anyone needs help, for example, or as you said, someone to study with, I think that will be a great community that we can start indeed. That will be really cool actually, so I'll look into it, and we can do it definitely. Alright, so just a little bit more left, we have alignment and auto margins. So another way to align items inside their area is to use auto margins. If you have ever centered your layout in the viewport by setting the right and left margin of the container block to auto, you know that an auto margin absorbs all the available space. By setting the margin to auto on both sides, it pushes the block onto the middle as both margins attempt to take all of the space. In this next example, I have given item 1 a left margin of auto. You can see how the content is now pushed over to the right side of the area as the auto margin takes up the remaining space after room for the content of that item has been assigned. So for item 1, they set auto margin to auto to the left, margin left auto, and it takes up as much space and everything gets pushed to the right. Let me play with that and try to remove the auto margin to see exactly the effect of it. So margin left auto, if we remove that, yeah, as you can see, the item was much bigger, but now once we give it margin left auto, it is only big enough to contain what is inside of it, and the leftover space gets taken up by the margin. You can see how the item is aligned using the Firefox Grid highlighter. Okay. And last we have alignment and writing modes. In all of these examples I have been working in English, which is a left to right language. This means that our start lines are top and left of our grid when thinking in physical direction. CSS grid layout and the box alignment specifications are designed to work with writing modes in CSS. This means that if you are working in a right to left language such as Arabic, the start of the grid would be top and right, so exactly inverted. The default of justify content start would be for grid tracks to start on the right hand side of the grid, so everything gets inverted basically as in writing. Setting auto margins using margin right or margin left, however, or absolutely positioning items using the top, right, bottom or left. Offsets would not honor writing modes. In the next guide we'll look further into this interaction between CSS grid layout, box alignment and writing modes. It will be important to understand if you develop sites that are then displayed in multiple languages, or if you want to mix languages or writing modes in a design. So indeed, I've never thought of it, but if you want to make your site multi-language, multilingual, and for example you have a translation in Arabic, you probably also have to think about that, and probably it will be a bit tricky as well with grid, but this is very obscure, and we'll see where we get when we get to it. But if I zoom in here, actually I just clicked on lesson completed because on this stream we've went through all of it, which is quite a bit actually. 2 hours and 20 minutes to go through this page right here with all the exercises. Actually we did all the levels on CSS Garden as well, which was really fun, but we're 86% done. And if I click on here, we have 2 more lessons to read, and then after that we're doing the project admin dashboard, which again I think it will be really fun. We're on to advanced grid properties, and that I'll save for next stream because I'm running out of time, but I'll try again to wake up early tomorrow so we can have a stream in the morning, and I will look into making a Discord for us all. And thank you for watching. Thank you so much, Supreme, over what you've been here since the beginning of the stream. I truly appreciate you, my brother. I'll actually give you the Where is it? There you go. I've given you a moderator for the chat because you're sticking here every day, and I appreciate you so much, my brother. So you have a little wrench next to your name from now on. And yeah, thanks so much, guys, for sticking with me today, and hopefully I see you tomorrow again. So thanks so much, and until next time, see you. Bye bye.